Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report, Thursday's edition, and we're broadcasting from both Southern California and Stamford, Connecticut. Folks, we have a very special guest on our show today. I'd like to welcome Leora Levy, United States Senate candidate for the state of Connecticut. Leora, happy to have you on Schaftlein Report today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me on your show. I'm delighted to be here.
Hey, Leora, give our audience, both our viewers and our listeners, some background on yourself. You've got a fascinating story from when you were born to the point of where you got into Connecticut politics. I'm sure our audience would love to hear it.
I would be delighted to tell you. I was born in Havana, Cuba. My family escaped communism. I wake up every morning and thank God that I am an American woman, waking up in the United States of America. It easily could have been different. You see, my mother also and her parents, my grandparents, escaped Nazi Europe in 1940. They were not able to get into the United States. We're going to be sent back to Europe, but we're able to get into Cuba. So I am here by virtue of the grace of God. And I know that, and I know that it's very important that I make a difference with this life I've been given. I've lived an American dream, and I want all Americans to have that opportunity.
Leora, you graduated from Brown University. You were a commodities trader. I remember the old days at Fibro Solomon, so we're speaking from the same language here. But you were involved in the commodities business. And then give us some background about how you got involved with the Republican Party. You've done a lot of fundraising for the party and highly respected throughout Connecticut and the country.
I thank you. Yes, well, I've been a Republican since I was sentient enough about politics to know the difference. I actually argued with my parents about Goldwater versus Johnson. So I was for Goldwater. They were for Johnson. So I just believe that the policies of the Republican Party are the best for every individual to succeed and to be prosperous and happy in life, as well as for society as a whole, for our country as a whole. So that is why I am a Republican, and I have been involved with campaigns, first as a volunteer, always as a volunteer, frankly, since I was in college, and through my adulthood. My husband and I are blessed, and we decided that we would support the Republican Party with donations, and from there I started raising money for the party myself, and I really believe in our party, and I've worked very hard. I'm the Republican National Committee woman from Connecticut. I represent Connecticut on the RNC. I'm on the executive committee of the RNC, and I'm also the only Jewish member of the Faith Advisory Board of the RNC, which is very important to me. I'm a very active member, and we share the same roots. We share our Judeo-Christian values, and we pray together and we lift each other up.
Leora, this country has a lot of problems right now. Ever since Joe Biden became president, the Democrats effectively, with 50+1 Kamala Harris controlling the Senate and the House, we've really been living under Democratic rule, and the country is clearly going in the wrong direction, as evidenced by virtually every polling that we see. Why don't you talk to our viewers and listeners about your thoughts on the economy, inflation, gas prices? I know the Democrats, they always try to deflect on certain issues, and they never really want the American public to focus on what's really important to most Americans. Give us your thoughts on those key issues, and what are the main things you are focusing on in the campaign?
Well, I am focused on the economy and the gas prices, because the inflation of over 9% that we are experiencing, the fact that we have had 2 negative quarters in a row now of GDP, and we are in a recession, no matter what Biden says, The fact that our gas prices are historically high because there is a shortage created by the failed policies of this administration, rubber stamped by Dick Blumenthal. Inflation is caused by failed policies, the trillions of dollars of spending, and now the new Manchin-Schumer Build Inflation Back Better bill that they're trying to pass that frankly will do so much more damage. It is exactly the opposite of what we should be doing. It will increase spending. It will reduce manufacturing. It will punish the most productive parts of our economy so that there are even fewer goods being chased by more dollars, causing more inflation. It will kill at least 30,000 good paying American private sector jobs in favor of thousands of new IRS jobs. This is a monstrosity. It is going to further damage our economy. But what's worse is it will make life even more unaffordable for American families. You know, parents right now go to the gas station, they have to decide, do I fill my tank? Do I feed my family? We have school starting at the end of this month. Now they have to worry, how am I going to afford the school supplies, the new shoes, everything kids need to start school? This is a very difficult time, and I'm going to Washington to fight for the families in Connecticut and families in America to stop the bad economic policy that is driving our economy into a ditch.
Oh, I could not agree with you more, Leona. And the interesting thing is this, and you mentioned Senator Blumenthal, you know, with a handful of exceptions, maybe Kyrsten Sinema being one, we'll see how that plays out. But it doesn't matter whether you're a conservative Democrat a la Manchin or a liberal Democrat like Schumer. It seems Blumenthal, he votes with Schumer probably 100% of the time. So if Connecticut returns Blumenthal, then it's like a Schumer clone. You could change all that by flipping Connecticut from blue to red. With the economy the way it is, you're out there talking to voters. How about the education issues and the things that they're trying to do to indoctrinate our kids? Are parents concerned about that?
Absolutely. Parental rights are a big issue here in Connecticut. You know, Connecticut is one of the blue states that took money that was supposed to be for mitigation of COVID in the schools. This was money from the American Rescue Plan, and they spent a lot of it on teaching critical race theory and training teachers to teach critical race theory and to root out systemic racism in the schools and for teachers to examine their own inherent biases. This is cultural Marxism. That's what critical race theory is. It is an effort to divide the American people by race because they were unsuccessful at dividing us by economics. And it will tear at the fabric of our society. I lived through and participated in the integration of the public schools in Charlotte, North Carolina. I stayed when I had an opportunity, when my parents were pushing me to go to private school. I said, no, I have to learn to get along with everyone at some point in my life. I am going to start now and be part of the solution, not the problem. And I stayed. And now they're trying to resegregate the schools and resegregate our society. I will not allow that to happen. We are e pluribus unum. We may have different backgrounds, but we are one people. We are all Americans.
Well, Leona, if you think back to last year when Terry McAuliffe tried pulling the same stunt on Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, they flipped. And we now have a Republican governor in Virginia instead of a Democrat. And if that backlash that you're referencing can play forth in Virginia, it certainly can play forth in Connecticut also, because my sense is when you add up the inflation, the gas prices, the cost of shelter, the critical race theory piece, and I haven't even gotten to some of the others, it seems like Connecticut voters are probably saying, enough of the Democrats, we need to have a change here.
Absolutely. Connecticut voters are fed up. And I just want you to know, I will always stand with parents. Parents control their children. Parents decide their medical care. Parents decide if they want to speak about sensitive sexual topics. That is not for the schools. That is not for the government to do in the guise of the school. You know, in Cuba, the first thing Castro did after he confiscated all the guns was to indoctrinate the children, to spy on their parents, inform on their parents, and he replaced themselves in their minds as a father figure. We cannot allow that to happen here. I am a parent. I raised three remarkable Republican sons, and I will not allow that to happen here in the United States. One of the things I neglected to mention when you asked my background and why I say I've lived an American dream is that President Trump nominated me to be ambassador to Chile. He did that because of my trading of copper concentrates in Chile and the fact that I speak Spanish. It was an honor that I will always, always be grateful for. And now I'm running for US Senate. So these are the types of things that if you work, if you can take advantage of the opportunities here, but it's important that people know they must strive for it and that the opportunity is there. I'm running to make sure that opportunity is there.
Well, Leora, speaking of the international subject, with you being nominated for ambassador to Chile, you also have experience going to Israel. When President Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, weren't you participating in that? I believe you were. Please share that experience with our viewers and listeners.
Oh my goodness, when I remember that day, it was May 14th, 2018, because I remember it was my husband's birthday and he gave me permission to be in Israel on his birthday. And I was there as part of the American delegation, one of 4 RNC members to be there to witness the opening of the new embassy in Jerusalem. President Trump is a visionary. He realized that in order to make peace, we didn't need to deal with the Palestinians with whom there's nobody to deal.
Right.
It was peace between Israel and the other Arab countries that was the key. And he realized it and he did it. And that is another part of his legacy that I will always, always remember and be very grateful for and admire.
Leon, but President Trump was right on so many things. I mean, I remember watching the footage of his meeting with some of the leaders in Europe where he warned them about the shortage possibility of Russian gas.
Yes.
That's happening now. Trump took the approach with the Abraham Accords. He also took the approach, he had no interest at all in that Iran nuclear deal. Given your international experience, Leon, can you give us your perspective of the situation now with Europe and China and Russia? Because you've got the background to, and I believe the beliefs similar to President Trump.
Yes, well, I believe that Putin started planning his invasion of Ukraine the minute Biden was inaugurated. He never would have done this under President Trump. President Trump, like President Reagan, knew the recipe for dealing with dictators and thugs like Putin is peace through strength. And Biden has sacrificed our strength for his woke agenda. The disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the allowing Putin to amass those troops. He started amassing those troops on the border of Ukraine early in the Biden administration. What did he think Putin was going to do? And Biden, the first thing he did actually was to stop the shipments of the weapons that President Trump had committed to send to Ukraine. So all of those messages were well received by Putin and Xi in China. And they are responding as thugs and dictators do.
Leora,
there's a vacuum and they're filling it.
Leora, what do you make of this situation? The Speaker Pelosi, and I virtually disagree with her on almost everything, but in this case, when she went to Taiwan, she was applauded by Republicans. The White House was like stunningly quiet. And you and I both know behind the scenes they didn't want her to go because Biden, for some reason, he has this thing where he doesn't want to upset Xi. And I'm sitting here saying, learn from Trump, learn from Reagan. I agree with you 100%. What do you make of that whole situation about how the White House reacted to Speaker's trip?
Look, as a Jew and as a Cuban, I support Taiwan. In fact, when I attended the Army War College National Security Seminar as a civilian, I was in a seminar about what's happening in the South China Seas with China, and I raised my hand and asked the generals and the admiral in the room, why aren't we leveraging our relationship with Taiwan in order to stop China, to stand up to China? And their heads exploded. They didn't even want to say the word Taiwan.
Right.
So, look, I support Taiwan. However, I do question the timing of Nancy Pelosi's trip and the fact that there seems such disarray in our foreign policy. This was not a well-planned, well-executed foreign policy initiative. And I just think that it was a bumbling into this situation, which could put us in a very risky place, frankly.
Yeah, there's no question there was risk involved. And you would think that the Speaker of the House and the President of the United States would get on the same page before an event like this happens. But
yes, and don't leave the Secretary of State out.
Tony Blinken. I don't even want to get started there.
In fact, I think when she and Putin took the measure of this administration early in Biden's term in March of 2020, when Blinken had his first meeting in Alaska with the Chinese delegation, they spent an hour berating him and criticizing the United States. Then they stood up and walked out, and he was like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah, it's really embarrassing.
That's when they took the measure of this administration.
Yeah, and we've seen example after example of that, Leora. Let me ask you this.
We never would have seen that under President Trump nor Secretary Pompeo. Never.
I'm with you 100% on that. I mean, when Mike Pompeo was in meetings, as an American, I didn't have to worry that our side was being represented the right way, knowing that Pompeo and Trump, were taking care of business. And we saw evidence of it. I mean, look, when President Trump left office, gas prices were around $2 a gallon. The United States, there was no Iran nuclear deal.
Nope.
There was no invasion. I mean, things were completely different. I agree with your assessment there. Let me ask you.
And don't forget, President Trump's first meeting with Xi at Mar-a-Lago, when over dessert, he bent over and said to President Xi, oh, by the way, I just launched missiles into Syria. Enjoy your dessert.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes.
Yes.
That's peace through strength.
Having been to Mar-a-Lago many times, I pictured exactly where it happened, and I know exactly what Trump did, and he did it to make a point too. He didn't just do it because there was a reasoning behind what the president was doing. And again, he seemed to have a good relationship with Xi, a respectful relationship. And
yes,
you've heard President Trump say many times he doesn't believe Putin would have invaded Ukraine had President Trump been in office. And you know what? I think he's right.
Yep. And by the way, I heard a report this morning that North Korea has conducted its 7th missile test.
Yes.
They had stopped firing missiles during the Trump administration.
Yes, they had. Yeah. Again,
they have no respect for Biden.
Yeah, they don't. Let me ask you this: do you in this race? Okay, I want to get 2 more policy things, and I want to talk about the race in Connecticut. You're a big proponent of a Second Amendment rights.
Yes, I am.
I knew you were. And let me ask you this. The crime that's hitting so many blue cities, and now it's gone really beyond blue cities, are Connecticut residents concerned about the crime wave and how it's affecting everybody?
Yes. In fact, in my hometown of Greenwich, Connecticut, a very safe place normally, 2 weeks ago, a woman was mugged at 4:30 in the afternoon on Greenwich Avenue, which is our main shopping street, broad daylight. And in June, we were informed by our local paper just this week, there was an armed robbery on Greenwich Avenue.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
I've lived here 34 years. This has never happened before. But it's a direct result of the Democrats and my primary opponents passing of a Police Accountability Act in 2020, May of 2020, that removed the qualified immunity and defunded the police here in Connecticut. We have a shortage of cops, and they cannot fill the positions. There is crime coming into our communities. They're stealing cars. They're mugging shoppers, as you can see. And there's a revolving door justice. The judges just let them out a couple hours later to do the same thing all over again. So this is a real problem. At the same time, my opponent helped to write the very restrictive gun legislation in Connecticut, has said she would do the same thing on the federal level. And so they're trying to disarm law-abiding citizens in the wake of rising crime so that we can't protect ourselves.
Yeah.
This is an untenable situation. I'm very proud to have been rated 2A by the CCDL, which is the Connecticut Gun Group, and I've been rated AQ, both the highest possible ratings for a candidate who has not been in office before, and that was AQ by the NRA. And I'm very proud of those endorsements. I believe that the Second Amendment is the one right, it's an unalienable right from God that guarantees we have every other right. And we are not China. We are not Australia. We are not Canada because we have a Second Amendment. And as I told you, in Cuba, first thing Castro did was confiscate the weapons.
Yep, yep, he sure did. I mean, I was in South Florida when a lot of people were coming over, and you're spot on with your analysis here. You know, Leora, you are a true conservative.
Yes.
Yeah, I can just, it comes across crystal clear, and you mean what you say, and you're an America First Republican. Talk about your race right now. It's in doing my research, there's 3 candidates in the race. Talk about that a little bit and give our viewers and listeners some perspective, because the primary is Tuesday.
It is. Well, I was America First before anybody coined that phrase. I was so proud to become an American. It was April of 1968 when I got to miss school and go say the Pledge of Allegiance and become an American citizen. And I have always put America first. I'm running against a career politician. She is part of the entrenched interest in Hartford, and I am the principled, common sense conservative outsider. She is the same kind of politician as Dick Blumenthal, and she votes the same way. She is not only pro-abortion, she has 100% rating from NARAL. She was endorsed by Planned Parenthood during her 22 years as a state rep. She worked very closely with Democrats on bills like changing the rules for mail-in ballots, expanding them, allowing them to be received after Election Day. She worked with them and voted for that. Once she was out of office in 2021, Republicans went back to voting against that. But while she was there, they had to vote for it. She whipped the votes. That was in front of President Trump's re-election.
So your task, it seems, Laura, is to high energy, get the conservative base out, because it's crystal clear to me you are the candidate of the conservative base
Absolutely.
In Connecticut. And it sounds also like a lot of the policies that President Trump supported, you seem very much supportive of those policies.
I do support his policies because they worked.
Yes.
Our country was much better off. Our economy was strong. Everybody who wanted a job had a job. Highest employment numbers for African Americans, Hispanics, women, young people, you name it. Everybody who wanted a job was working in good jobs. Now we are in, quote, transition. I call it if it's a transition into a recession.
Yep.
It's a terrible economy. We were a net exporter of energy. We have the largest reserves, and we produce it more cleanly. And with a stroke of the pen, Biden has shut down our energy producing industry and has created a gas shortage. He has very foolishly released oil from our strategic petroleum reserve, which is for strategic emergency purposes, leaving us more vulnerable should there be a hurricane in the Gulf or anything like that, any catastrophe. This is very bad policy. And President Trump he really re-energized our energy production.
Yeah.
He opened the Keystone Pipeline. We had plenty of leases, and
Yeah.
we had people exploring for more energy sources. You know, green energy is good as a supplement.
Mm.
You know, it's not bad, but we're not at any point where we can rely on it.
You're,
It will shut down our economy, and it makes life unaffordable. Just wait until winter comes, and those of us in the Northeast have to heat our home with
yeah.
heating oil.
Yeah.
Even in April, let me tell you what happened in April when my oil company called me the day before coming to fill our tank and asked me, Mrs. Levy, do you want a full tank or do you want a half a tank? Many of our customers can't afford the full tank right now, and they're saying to only fill it halfway since the weather's getting warmer. What would you like? In 34 years of heating my home in with oil, I've never had the oil company ask me that question.
Yeah.
People are hurting, and it's going to be worse in October and November when the weather turns here and they need more heating oil. I'm very afraid for the future for people who really are having a hard time. They're charging up their credit cards. Credit card debt is up tremendously now. People are really having a hard time making ends meet, and I'm going to Washington to fight for them.
Well, when you get through the primary on Tuesday, your opponent's going to be Richard Blumenthal. And,
Yes, he will.
And his approval rate, here's why I'm really excited for your race. You win the primary on Tuesday. I think we have a real shot at Connecticut flipping from blue to red. I'll tell you why. Blumenthal's got an approval rating below 50%. I mean, he was around 45% the last poll I've seen. And as you just mentioned, when people are going to vote end of October, November, it may be cool. They may be paying these higher heating bills. Inflation's still likely to remain high. Gas prices have come down, but they haven't come down enough. And then all the other issues you've talked about, from the education to the crime. I think people are going to go into that voting booth and they're going to say, we need a change. And with his vulnerability and your conservative enthusiasm, I think you've got a big time shot of pulling off an upset here.
I sure do. There was a recent poll that showed that 47 to 41 Connecticut voters, general election voters, not just Republicans, but general election voters, want a change. They do not want to send Blumenthal back to Washington. And I am the principled, common sense conservative. I'm the only pro-life candidate in the race. I am strongly pro-Second Amendment. I voted for President Trump twice, and he nominated me to be ambassador to Chile. My opponent did not even vote for Trump, and she thinks he should be indicted for January 6th.
Yeah, that doesn't go with Republican orthodoxy.
No. And her campaign and her super PAC are being funded by a felon who was convicted for bribery and corruption. He brought down a Republican governor in the biggest political scandal in Connecticut. He has funded her super PAC. He and his family have maxed out to her campaign directly. I don't understand why she took this money, and I just wonder, what does he expect from her? But that's the kind of entrenched interest I'm up against. The third candidate is a perennial loser. He has run multiple times and has always lost. He's best known for taking $50,000 of donor money, putting it in a fake charity, and then keeping it for himself. So I'm really up against the swamp. I'm the only principled conservative candidate. I'm doing this because I love my country, and I cannot allow the Democrats and the woke progressives to do what they're trying to do to our country.
Leora, you've received some pretty good endorsements, I believe.
Yes, I have.
I'll name a couple of them, and then feel free to expand the list. But Linda McMahon, former cabinet secretary, has endorsed you. Dick Morris, I understand, has endorsed you.
Yes.
And feel free to share other endorsements that you may have received.
Absolutely. Marsha Blackburn, Tom Cotton, Rob Portman, Tom Tillis, Joe Wilson, Kathy McMarsh Rogers. Oh, gee, I hope
No, those are all great Republicans.
I apologize if I didn't mention them. Freedom Works has endorsed me. I've been endorsed by Connecticut Republican Assembly, the National Hispanic Republican Assembly. You know, Spanish is my first language. I've already cut an ad in Spanish for the general. I've been campaigning with Hispanics. Yo hablo español. Yo puedo hablar con cualquier persona en español. I will help bring the Hispanic voters to our Republican candidates all up and down the ticket. One of my proudest achievements as National Committee woman was convincing the RNC to open a Hispanic and African American Engagement Center in New Britain, Connecticut. That is the culmination of my work at the RNC, and I'm very proud of that because we are now going into their communities and they are coming to us. We have shared values, faith, family, good education for our kids, and the opportunity to work and achieve the American dream. That's why they will be supporting our candidates this fall.
I have to thank you for that work you did with the RNC, because you know what, there was a time where Republicans did not outreach to the Hispanic community to the level it's being done right now. And you saw what happened with the invasion at the border and the recent election of Mayra Flores from a formerly blue district. That was a deep blue district that we said on this show prior to the election was trending red. And Hispanic Americans are just like any other American. They want safety, they want security, and they want a border that is secure. I mean, and I know you're a proponent of that.
Yes, I am. And you will see the same thing in Connecticut. The same issues are driving this election, and that is why we will win. That is why I will defeat Dick Blumenthal.
Leora, we got 1 minute left. I want you to give us your closing piece. And if people want to donate at this late point in the campaign, tell our viewers and listeners what they can do to help you out.
I would really appreciate it. My website is Leora4ct.com, and that's the word for, F-O-R. So Leora, F-O-R-C-T.com. I would appreciate donations. I have had to triple the amount of ads I have on TV because I am being slaughtered by this felon-funded fiction from her super PAC that is just lying about me. The two other candidates are colluding at this point. The man in the race who I mentioned, the perennial candidate, is now speaking and saying, if you don't vote for me, vote for the other woman, but don't vote for Leora. That's what he's saying. Well, so he's some kind of real conservative, isn't he?
Well, I can say this on speak on behalf of our audience, Leora. You are the true conservative in this race, and we want a true conservative, someone with conservative beliefs, to represent the state of Connecticut. And I cannot thank you enough for coming on our show today. I know you're at a busy campaign schedule, and we can't thank you enough, and we wish you all the best on Tuesday, Leora. Thank you very much for being my guest today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And again, we have a great opportunity to defeat Dick Blumenthal, but it matters who we nominate. I am a principled, common sense conservative, an outsider, not a career politician. And I will always stand up for our values, for our principles, and for the American family. Thank you.
Folks, it doesn't get any better than that. Thank you again. Much appreciated. That's it for today, folks. And again, Tuesday's a big day. Do whatever you can to help her out because she's one of us. Thanks for viewing today. It's been a great week. We'll cut through the propaganda as always. See you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.